I taste copper on my tongue, and for a moment, just a moment, I think it is blood. But I have not bled in 17 years. The taste is a phantom, a ghost signal from nerves that no longer exist, fired by a brain that cannot reconcile what I have become with what I once was. I stand in the Forge Temple's eastern chapel, staring at my reflection in a panel of polished adamantium, and I do not recognize the thing that stares back. Red robes, servo harness rising from my shoulders like the legs of some patient predatory insect. Half my face is still flesh, pale, scarred flesh that remembers the sun of my home world. But the other half is a topography of circuitry and cybernetic reconstruction. The machine half does not blink. It watches with a lens that sees in spectrums I never knew existed, feeding data directly into my consciousness, whether I want it or not. Temperature readings, radiation levels, structural integrity of the walls around me. I cannot make it stop. I remember when I was whole. It is important that I remember this. I tell myself it is important, though I cannot articulate why anymore. My name was Matthias Kael, and I was a tactical marine of the Crimson Warden's 3rd Company. I remember the weight of my bolter, the particular way it kicked against my shoulder when I fired. I remember the smell of my battle brothers after a long campaign, sweat and gun oil, and the recycled air of the Vengeful Decree, our strike cruiser. We would sit in the Chapel of Remembrance after action, still in our armor, and Brother Sergeant Hadrian would lead us in the Litany of Victory. His voice was deep, resonant, and when he spoke the Emperor's words, I believed them with every fiber of my being. I can still hear that voice if I concentrate, though now it comes to me through auditory recall files stored in my secondary memory cortex. The sound is perfect, digitally preserved, but it lacks something essential. Warmth, perhaps, or the slight imperfection of humanity. There was a day, I think it was spring on Vaxilis Prime, though the planet's seasons were strange and unpredictable, when we stood down after a month of continuous combat against the greenskin filth. Hadrian took us to the observation deck, and we looked out at the world we had just saved. 3 million human souls still breathed because we had held the line. The sun was setting through the atmosphere, and it painted everything in shades of amber and crimson. I remember thinking that the light looked like the chapter colors, like the Emperor himself was blessing our victory. Brother Tiberius, we called him Tib, stood beside me, and he said something about how the light reminded him of harvest season on his birth world. He was one of the few among us who could still remember such things, details from before the transformation into Adeptus Astartes. Most of us had been recruited as children, and the hypno-conditioning and biological reconstruction had burned away those early memories like morning fog. But Tiberius remembered wheat fields and his mother's hands, rough from work. He died 3 years ago. I watched an orc war boss tear him apart while I was pinned under rubble. My legs crushed, my primary heart pierced by shrapnel, my secondary heart straining to keep me conscious through the pain. I could do nothing but watch and scream his name through a throat full of blood. That was the day everything changed. I remember the pain. Not the physical pain, that is easy to recall, catalogued in my neural files with clinical precision, but the other pain, the knowing. As I lay there, bleeding out, I knew with absolute certainty that I was dying. I had faced death before, as all Space Marines do, but this was different. This was final. I could feel my body shutting down, systems failing one by one, my enhanced physiology fighting and losing against catastrophic trauma. My Susan membrane tried to activate, to put me in suspended animation, but there was too much damage. I was disappearing into darkness, and my last thought was of that sunset on Vaxilis Prime. I wanted to see it one more time. I wanted to feel the warmth of a star on my face. I wanted to stand beside my brothers and know that we had purpose, that we mattered, that our suffering meant something. Then the apothecaries found me. Then the chapter master made his decision. Then I woke up in the Medici Bay of the Vengeful Decree, and I could not feel my hands. I could see them, or rather I could see the mecha dendrites that had replaced them, but there was no sensation, no warmth, no texture. I tried to make a fist and servo motors whined and steel fingers closed around nothing at all. A Medici servitor stood beside my bed, its dead eyes staring at nothing. and I saw tubes running from my body to machines that breathed for me, that pumped blood for me, that performed functions I could not name. I tried to scream, but my jaw would not open. Something had been done to it, some reconstruction I did not yet understand. The sound that came from me was not human. It was a digital wail, synthesized and modulated through vox speakers I did not know I had. An apothecary came, Brother Apothecary Severus, his armor white and pristine, the narthecium on his arm gleaming with sacred oils. He looked at me with something that might have been pity, though it was hard to tell through his helmet. "You are blessed, Brother Matthias," he said, and his voice was gentle in a way that made me want to weep. "The chapter master has chosen you for a great honor. You will serve the Omnissiah now. You will go to Mars, to the forged temples of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and you will learn the sacred mysteries of the machine. You will become Techmarine. I did not want this honor. I wanted to die with my brothers. I wanted to fall in battle and be remembered in the Feast of Blades, my name carved into the wall of heroes. I wanted to be whole and human and dead rather than broken and augmented and alive. But I could not speak these thoughts. My vox systems had not yet been calibrated, and all that came from me were static bursts and distorted sounds." Severus interpreted my silence as acceptance. Perhaps he had to. Perhaps he knew, as I would soon learn, that what we want is irrelevant. We are space marines. We serve, we endure. We sacrifice everything, even our humanity, even our deaths, for the Imperium and the Emperor. That was the moment I understood that I had not survived. Matthias Kyle, tactical marine, had died under that rubble. What lay in this medici bay was something else, something new, something that would spend the next decades learning exactly what had been lost and what terrible price the Omnissiah demands for his blessings. I can still taste that phantom copper on my tongue. I savor it. It is one of the last sensations I have that feels truly mine. The journey to Mars takes 6 months through the warp, and I spend every moment of it in the ship's medici bay, being prepared. They say, prepared as if I am a weapon being cleaned and oiled, and perhaps that is accurate. Each day, servitors come with their trays of gleaming instruments, and each day, another piece of me is removed and replaced. I watch this happen with a detachment I do not fully understand. Perhaps it is shock. Perhaps it is the combat stimulants they feed into my system to keep me docile. Perhaps it is something else, something worse, the growing realization that resistance is not just futile but blasphemous. To refuse the Omnissiah's blessings is to reject the Emperor's will. And so I lie still while they cut away my humanity, piece by piece, and I try to remember prayers I learned as a neophyte, words about duty and sacrifice and eternal service. My left arm goes first. They tell me the damage was too extensive, the bone shattered beyond even Adeptus Astartes' healing capabilities. They replace it with a bionic limb that connects directly to my neural interface. The first time I move it, I vomit. The sensation is wrong, not painful, just fundamentally incorrect. I can feel the arm, but the feeling comes from somewhere else, not from flesh and nerve, but from data streams and sensor feedback. When I touch the steel bed frame, I do not feel cold metal. I feel pressure readings, temperature differentials, material composition analysis. My brain tries to interpret this as touch, and the result is a kind of vertigo, a sensory confusion that makes my vision swim. They tell me this is normal. They tell me adaptation takes time. They tell me many things, and I hear none of them because I am too busy mourning the loss of something I never appreciated when I had it. The simple act of feeling the world around me. The smell of the medici bay is antiseptic and sharp, laced with sacred oils and the ozone scent of active machinery. Beneath that is something else, something organic and wrong, the smell of my own flesh being cut away. They burn the excess tissue, and the smoke carries a scent I recognize from battlefields, from the pyres where we burn the dead. I am being burned alive, slowly, methodically, and I am expected to be grateful. Sometimes I catch the apothecaries watching me, studying my reactions. I wonder if they are concerned I will break. I wonder if others have broken before me. I want to ask, but my vox systems are still being calibrated, and speech comes out garbled and distorted. So I remain silent, and the work continues. My right leg is next, then my left. Both are replaced from the knee down with augmetic limbs that hiss and whir with every movement. The first time they make me stand, I collapse immediately. My balance is gone, my sense of my own body's position in space utterly destroyed. I crash to the floor, and the impact sends error messages cascading through my awareness. Warnings about structural stress, recalibration requirements, system diagnostics I do not understand. It takes 3 weeks before I can walk without falling. The servitors watch with their dead eyes as I pace the length of the Medicae bay, over and over, learning how to exist in this new form. My footsteps sound wrong. They clang against the deck plating with a metallic rhythm that echoes off the walls. I used to move silently, as all Adeptus Astartes are trained to do. Now I sound like a servitor. Now I sound like a machine. They rebuild my jaw. They rebuild my throat. They install voxcasters and augmetic vocal cords because the shrapnel damage destroyed my ability to speak naturally. The first time I hear my new voice, I do not recognize it. It is flat, modulated with a slight mechanical distortion that makes every word sound like it is being spoken through a vox unit. Because it is. My voice is no longer produced by breath and flesh, but by speakers and synthetic sound generation. I try to say my name, Matthias Kale, and the words come out correct but lifeless. There is no warmth in them, no humanity. I sound like a servitor given the gift of speech, and the irony is not lost on me. The journey to Mars takes 6 months through the warp, and I spend every moment of it in the ship's Medicae bay, being prepared. They say prepared, as if I am a weapon being cleaned and oiled, and perhaps that is accurate. Each day, servitors come with their trays of gleaming instruments, and each day, another piece of me is removed and replaced. I watch this happen with a detachment I do not fully understand. Perhaps it is shock. Perhaps it is the combat stimulants they feed into my system to keep me docile. Perhaps it is something else, something worse. The growing realization that resistance is not just futile but blasphemous. To refuse the Omnissiah's blessings is to reject the Emperor's will. And so I lie still while they cut away my humanity piece by piece, and I try to remember prayers I learned as a neophyte, words about duty and sacrifice and eternal service. My left arm goes first. They tell me the damage was too extensive, the bone shattered beyond even Adeptus Astartes' healing capabilities. They replace it with a bionic limb that connects directly to my neural interface. The first time I move it, I vomit. The sensation is wrong, not painful, just fundamentally incorrect. I can feel the arm, but the feeling comes from somewhere else. Not from flesh and nerve, but from data streams and sensor feedback. When I touch the steel bed frame, I do not feel cold metal. I feel pressure readings, temperature differentials, material composition analysis. My brain tries to interpret this as touch, and the result is a kind of vertigo, a sensory confusion that makes my vision swim. They tell me this is normal. They tell me adaptation takes time. They tell me many things, and I hear none of them because I am too busy mourning the loss of something I never appreciated when I had it. The simple act of feeling the world around me. The smell of the Medicae bay is antiseptic and sharp, laced with sacred oils and the ozone scent of active machinery. Beneath that is something else, something organic and wrong, the smell of my own flesh being cut away. They burn the excess tissue, and the smoke carries a scent I recognize from battlefields, from the pyres where we burn the dead. I am being burned alive, slowly, methodically, and I am expected to be grateful. Sometimes I catch the apothecaries watching me, studying my reactions. I wonder if they are concerned I will break. I wonder if others have broken before me. I want to ask, but my vox systems are still being calibrated, and speech comes out garbled and distorted. So I remain silent, and the work continues. My right leg is next, then my left. Both are replaced from the knee down with augmetic limbs that hiss and whir with every movement. The first time they make me stand, I collapse immediately. My balance is gone, my sense of my own body's position in space utterly destroyed. I crash to the floor, and the impact sends error messages cascading through my awareness. Warnings about structural stress, recalibration requirements, system diagnostics I do not understand. It takes 3 weeks before I can walk without falling. The servitors watch with their dead eyes as I pace the length of the Medicae bay, over and over, learning how to exist in this new form. My footsteps sound wrong. They clang against the deck plating with a metallic rhythm that echoes off the walls. I used to move silently, as all Adeptus Astartes are trained to do. Now I sound like a servitor. Now I sound like a machine. They rebuild my jaw. They rebuild my throat. They install voxcasters and augmetic vocal cords because the shrapnel damage destroyed my ability to speak naturally. The first time I hear my new voice, I do not recognize it. It is flat, modulated, with a slight mechanical distortion that makes every word sound like it is being spoken through a vox unit. Because it is. My voice is no longer produced by breath and flesh, but by speakers and synthetic sound generation. I try to say my name, Matthias Kyle, and the words come out correct but lifeless. There is no warmth in them, no humanity. I sound like a servitor given the gift of speech, and the irony is not lost on me. Brother Chaplain Mordecai visits me during my 3rd month of reconstruction. He stands at the foot of my bed, his skull-faced helm regarding me in silence for a long moment before he speaks. "You suffer," he says, and it is not a question. I manage a nod, the servos in my neck whining softly. "Good," he continues. "Suffering purifies. Suffering brings us closer to the Emperor's own sacrifice. He sits upon the golden throne in eternal agony so that we might live. Your pain is nothing compared to his. Remember this when you are tempted to despair." I want to tell him that I am not tempted to despair. I am drowning in it. I am made of it. Every augmetic they install, every piece of flesh they remove, takes me further from the space marine I was and transforms me into something I do not recognize. But I cannot articulate this. My new voice cannot carry the weight of such emotions. So I simply nod again, and Mordecai seems satisfied. He recites the litany of sacrifice over me, his voice echoing in the sterile chamber, and then he leaves. I am alone with the servitors and my thoughts, and I do not know which is worse. We reach Mars on a day I do not notice until it has already happened. Time has lost meaning in the Medicae Bay, where there are no windows and the lighting never changes. One of the apothecaries informs me that we have entered orbit around the red planet, and that tomorrow I will be transferred to the custody of the Adeptus Mechanicus. He says this as if it should mean something, as if I should feel excitement or anticipation. I feel nothing. The stimulants have done their work too well, or perhaps I have simply run out of emotions to spend. I look at my reflection in the polished tray beside my bed and see a stranger. Half my face is now bionic, my left eye replaced with an augmetic lens that glows with a faint red light. Cables run from ports in my skull, connecting to interface systems I do not yet understand how to use. My body is a patchwork of flesh and machine, and I cannot tell any more where one ends and the other begins. They dress me in red robes before the shuttle descent. The robes are heavy, lined with circuitry and blessed by Mechanicus tech priests. They smell like incense and machine oil, a combination I will come to know intimately in the years ahead. The robes hide most of my augmetics, but they cannot hide the servo harness they have installed on my back. 4 mechadendrites that extend from a harness bolted directly to my spine. Each one ends in a different tool: a welding torch, a manipulator claw, a plasma cutter, a data probe. They move when I think about moving them, responding to neural commands I give without fully understanding how. They are part of me now, extensions of my will, and yet they feel like invaders, parasites attached to my body against my consent. The shuttle breaks atmosphere with a violence that would terrify a normal human. I barely notice. My inner ear has been modified, my sense of balance augmented with gyroscopic stabilizers. I do not feel the turbulence. I only see it in the data displays that overlay my vision: altitude, velocity, atmospheric pressure, all scrolling past in an endless stream of information I cannot turn off. This is what they have made me: a walking data processor, a living tool. The shuttle lands at a forge temple whose name I do not catch, and when the ramp lowers, I smell Mars for the first time. Rust, burning metal, sacred oils, chemical compounds I cannot name. The air is thin, even for my enhanced lungs, and tastes of industry and ancient secrets. Tech priests in red robes wait at the base of the ramp, their augmetics far more extensive than mine, their humanity buried so deep I wonder if any remains. One of them steps forward, and I cannot tell if they were ever male or female. Their voice is a binary cant, a machine language that my new systems translate automatically into Gothic. "Welcome, initiate," they say, and the word initiate carries implications I do not yet understand. "You have been blessed with the Omnissiah's touch. Now you will learn his mysteries. Now you will be made worthy." I want to ask, worthy of what? But I do not. I follow them into the Forge Temple, my footsteps echoing on ancient stone, and I feel the weight of millennia pressing down on me. This place is old beyond comprehension, built during the dark age of technology, maintained through the age of strife, sanctified during the Great Crusade. How many others have walked these halls before me? How many have undergone this same transformation? How many have lost themselves in the process? The training begins immediately. They take me to a chamber filled with machinery I do not recognize, and they tell me to commune with it. Reach out, the tech priest instructs. Let the machine speak to you. Let the Omnissiah guide your understanding. I do not know what this means, but I extend one of my mechadendrites toward a cogitator bank. And the moment the data probe makes contact, my world explodes into light and sound and information. I am inside the machine. I can feel its processes, its calculations, its purpose. It is beautiful and terrifying and overwhelming, and I cannot breathe, cannot think, cannot remember who I am or why I am here. There is only the machine, and the machine is everything, and I am drowning in its digital consciousness. They pull me back after what feels like hours but is only seconds. I collapse to my knees, vomiting bile and coolant fluid. I do not know where the coolant comes from until I realize some of it is leaking from me, from my augmetics, from systems that are not properly sealed. The tech priest stands over me, and though I cannot see their face beneath their hood, I sense satisfaction. You have touched the Omnissiah's grace, they say. You have begun to understand. This is only the first lesson. There will be many more. I kneel on the floor of that ancient chamber, my new body trembling, and I finally understand what has happened to me. I have not been saved. I have been conscripted into a war I do not comprehend, a war between flesh and machine, between human consciousness and digital existence. And I am the battlefield. The first year on Mars is a descent into mysteries I am not equipped to understand. They place me in a training cohort with 11 other aspirants. Not all are Space Marines, though most are. 2 are tech adepts who have shown aptitude for military application. 1 is a Skitari Alpha who survived a campaign that killed his entire maniple and somehow caught the attention of Amagos. We are a collection of the broken and the blessed, and we sit in chambers carved from the bedrock of Mars itself, while robed figures teach us the sixfold path of the Omnissiah, the litanies of ignition, the canticles of maintenance. I memorize words in languages that predate the Imperium. I learn mathematical formulas that describe the relationship between matter and energy, between the physical and the divine. I commune with machine spirits, coaxing them to wakefulness, learning their preferences and their anger. At night, though there is no true night in the Forge Temple, only a dimming of lights that marks rest periods, I lie in my cell and try to remember what it felt like to be Matthias Kyle. I focus on specific memories, treating them like precious artifacts I must preserve. The sunset on Vaxillus Prime, Brother Tiberius and his wheat fields, Hadrian's voice in the chapel, my hand, my real hand, flesh and bone gripping my bolter. I replay these memories over and over, examining them from every angle, storing them in both my biological memory and my data banks. I am terrified of forgetting. I am terrified that if I lose these memories, I will lose the last connection to the person I used to be. But the training is relentless, and it leaves little room for nostalgia. Each morning we enter the practice foundries where we are taught to repair, maintain, and create. I learn to weld ceramite plating with a precision that would have seemed impossible before my augmentation. My mechadendrites move independently, each one performing a separate task while my hands, one flesh, one steel, work on yet another component. It is like conducting an orchestra where I am every instrument simultaneously. At first it is maddening. I cannot coordinate all these limbs, cannot process all the sensory input flooding my consciousness. I drop tools, I ruin components. I trigger the anger of machine spirits who reject my clumsy ministrations. But gradually, something changes. My brain adapts. Neural pathways form, strengthened by the augmetic implants laced through my cerebral cortex. What was impossible becomes difficult. What was difficult becomes routine. By the 3rd month, I can strip and reassemble a bolter in 47 seconds while simultaneously running diagnostics on a power armor servo and calculating trajectory solutions for an artillery barrage. The information flows through me like water, and I begin to understand why the Mechanicus worships the machine. There is a purity to it, a lack of ambiguity. A bolt either fits or it does not. A circuit either functions or it fails. There is no moral complexity, no ethical dilemma. Only the binary truth of function and dysfunction. I miss the ambiguity. I miss the humanity of doubt. There is another space marine in my cohort, a brother from the Iron Hands chapter named Verathak. He has been augmented far more extensively than I have. Both arms are bionic, his legs are full augmetic replacements, and nearly half his torso is encased in subdermal armor plating. When he removes his robes, he looks more machine than man, and I find myself both repelled and fascinated. One evening, during a rest period, I ask him how he bears it, how he accepts what has been done to him. He regards me with eyes that are still human, one of the few parts of him that remains unchanged, and I see something in them I did not expect. Sadness. Deep, ancient sadness. "You do not accept it, brother," he says, his voice synthesized but somehow still carrying emotion. "You endure it, day by day, year by year, until one day you wake and realize you cannot remember what it felt like to be whole. And on that day, you either make peace with what you have become or you go mad. Have you made peace?" I ask. He considers this for a long moment. "Ask me in another century," he finally says. And there is something in his tone, a weariness perhaps, or a warning that silences any further questions. The training intensifies. They teach us combat applications, how to deploy in support of our chapters, how to maintain equipment in the field under fire. We practice in simulation chambers where servitor opponents attack us while we attempt to repair damaged power armor or restore function to disabled vehicles. It is surreal, this combination of violence and technical precision. I learn to weld while dodging simulated bolter fire. I learn to commune with machine spirits while servitors try to tear my limbs from my body. The instructors watch dispassionately, recording our performance, noting our failures. Those who cannot adapt are removed from the program. I do not ask where they go. I do not want to know. Months blur into each other. I lose track of time in the endless cycles of training, maintenance, study, and rest. The Forge Temple becomes my entire world. I forget what the sky looks like. I forget what it feels like to stand in natural light. There are no windows here, no connection to the world beyond the ancient walls. Only the red glow of forges, the blue flicker of plasma torches, the green phosphorescence of data screens. I begin to dream in technical schematics. I wake from rest periods with equations running through my mind, solutions to engineering problems I did not know I had been considering. My consciousness is becoming fragmented, distributed across multiple processes, and I cannot tell anymore where my thoughts end and the machine's calculations begin. I try to pray, as I was taught as a neophyte. I recite the litanies of battle, the oaths of moment, the Emperor's own words as recorded in the Lectitio Divinitatus. But the words feel hollow. They do not resonate as they once did. I am changing, not just physically but spiritually. And I do not know if the Emperor recognizes me anymore. I do not know if I still have a soul, or if it has been replaced by processors and data streams. The tech priests would say this is blasphemy. They would say the soul is merely information, that consciousness is simply complex computation, that there is no fundamental difference between flesh and machine. But I am not yet convinced. I want to believe there is something ineffable about human existence, something that cannot be digitized or augmented. I cling to this belief even as evidence accumulates against it. One day, I think it is near the end of my first year, though I cannot be certain, I am summoned to a private chamber. A Magos waits for me there, a being so heavily augmented that I cannot determine their original species, let alone their gender. They tower over me, supported by multiple mechanical legs, their upper body a configuration of manipulator arms and data ports. Their face, if it can be called that, is a smooth mask of polished brass with a single optical sensor that glows with baleful red light. "You are progressing adequately," the Magos says, their voice a chorus of overlapping synthesized tones. Your aptitude scores place you in the 73rd percentile of current cohort. Your chapter will be pleased. You will return to them in 6 months bearing the rank of Techmarine and the blessings of the Omnissiah. 6 months. Only 6 months remain. I should feel relief. I should feel anticipation at the thought of rejoining my brothers, of returning to the Crimson Wardens and resuming my service to the Emperor. But instead I feel dread, because I know with certainty that when I return, I will not be the brother they remember. I will be something else, something changed, and I do not know if they will accept what I have become. I return to the vengeful decree on a cold day in ship time, though all days are cold in the void. My brothers greet me in the hangar bay, and I see the moment they recognize me, or fail to. Brother Captain Davros approaches first, his face unreadable behind his battle-worn features. "Brother Matthias," he says formally, "you have returned to us. The Omnissiah's blessing upon you." The words are correct, but there is distance in them. Caution. I am no longer simply Brother Matthias. I am Techmarine Matthias, and that single word, Techmarine, creates a gulf between us that I feel physically, as if I have been moved to a different gravity well. I want to embrace them as brothers, to fall back into the easy camaraderie we once shared, but I can see in their eyes that I am different now. Other. My red robes mark me as separate, and the servo harness on my back makes me alien in their sight. I am assigned quarters away from my former squad, in a section of the ship near the armory and vehicle bay. This makes sense logically. My duties will keep me in those areas, but it feels like exile. I spend my first night back aboard ship staring at the ceiling of my new quarters, listening to the familiar sounds of the vengeful decree, the hum of plasma drives, the rush of recycled air through ventilation shafts, the distant clang of maintenance work. These sounds used to comfort me. Now they distract me because my augmetic hearing cannot filter them out properly. I hear everything simultaneously in too much detail, and sleep does not come easily. The work begins immediately. The chapter's rhino transports need maintenance. The land raiders require blessing and repair. Power armor servo motors are malfunctioning. Bolters are jamming. There is always something broken, always something that requires the touch of a Techmarine. I throw myself into the labor, grateful for the distraction. I commune with machine spirits, soothing their anger, negotiating with their temperamental consciousness. I weld, I calibrate, I repair. Days pass, then weeks, then months. I fight when required. When the chapter deploys, I go with them, though no longer as a line brother. I am support. I am logistics. I am the one who keeps the vehicles running, who maintains the equipment, who ensures the guns continue firing. I stand on battlefields and feel nothing, because I am focused on technical problems rather than existential ones. An orc warband attacks our position. I barely notice. I am repairing a damaged predator tank, my mechadendrites deep in its engine housing, my consciousness merged with its machine spirit. Bolter rounds ping off my servo harness. I do not flinch. I am becoming what Mars made me, a tool with a singular purpose. Brother Sergeant Hadrian dies in my 3rd year back. A Chaos cultist's Lascanon shot takes him in the chest, melting through his armor and liquefying his internal organs before his Laraman cells can respond. I am there when it happens. I am 15 meters away, installing a replacement track on a rhino. I hear his death scream over the Vox network. I look up and see him fall, his armor smoking, and I do not know what I feel. Something distant, muted, as if the emotion is happening to someone else and I am merely observing. I return to my work. The rhino's track must be replaced. The tactical situation requires mobile assets. This is logical. This is correct. But that night in my quarters I try to grieve and find that I cannot. The sorrow is there somewhere, but I cannot reach it. There is a wall between me and my emotions, and I do not know if it was built by my augmetics or by my own mind, protecting itself from pain it can no longer process. The years accumulate. 5, 7, 10. I lose count. Time becomes measured in campaigns rather than chronological progression. The Gerathian Crusade, the defense of Hive Primus, the purging of the Hulk Eternal Damnation. I am present for all of them, working in the background, maintaining the machines that allow my brothers to wage war. They thank me sometimes. They acknowledge my service. But we do not speak as brothers anymore. The distance has grown too great. They tell jokes I do not understand. They reference shared experiences from campaigns I was not part of. Battles that occurred while I was on Mars, or buried in the bowels of a forge ship performing repairs. I begin to forget things. Small things at first. The taste of the wine we drank after the Vaxilis Prime campaign. I know I once knew it, but the specific flavor is gone. The exact shade of amber in that sunset, it has blurred in my memory, become generic, lost its particularity. Brother Tiberius's face. I can recall the general features, but the specific details have degraded. I check my databanks, hoping I stored these memories digitally, but I find nothing. I was too focused on technical schematics, on repair protocols, on the endless stream of machinery that flows through my consciousness. The human memories were never backed up. They are simply gone. This terrifies me more than anything I have faced in combat. I am losing myself, not to enemy action, but to simple entropy. The person I was is degrading, memory by memory, and I cannot stop it. I try to hold on. I spend rest periods forcing myself to recall details from before Mars, but it becomes harder each time. The memories are distant now, like stories someone once told me about a person I used to know. I can recite the facts. I was Matthias Kyle, I was a tactical marine, I had brothers I loved, but the emotional content is fading. I am becoming a historical record of myself rather than a living continuity. Verithak visits me once, during a joint operation with the Iron Hands. We stand together in a vehicle bay while our brothers prepare for deployment, and he asks me how I am adapting. I want to tell him the truth, that I am losing myself, that I am terrified, that I do not know how to be human anymore. But when I open my mouth, what comes out is systems functioning within acceptable parameters. He nods slowly, and I see that same sadness in his eyes that I saw years ago on Mars. Yes, he says quietly. That is the worst part, is it not? When you begin to think of yourself in those terms, systems, parameters, function, not feelings, not experiences, not life. He places a bionic hand on my shoulder, and I feel the pressure sensors register the contact. But there is no warmth, no comfort, just data. Hold on as long as you can, brother, he says. The day you stop fighting is the day you truly die, but I am tired of fighting. I am tired of struggling to maintain a humanity that the Imperium itself does not value. I am a tool, and tools do not have existential crises. Tools function or they do not. And I am still functioning, still serving, still performing my duty. Is that not enough? The Emperor does not need me to feel. He needs me to work. The Omnissiah does not require my anguish. He requires my skill. Perhaps Verithak is wrong. Perhaps the struggle itself is the problem. Perhaps acceptance is not surrender, but wisdom. I stop visiting the Chapel of Remembrance. I stop trying to participate in the rituals that bind the chapter together. I work, I repair. I maintain, I deploy, I return. The cycle continues endless and unchanging, and I am part of it now, as mechanical as the machines I service. Days blur into weeks, into years, into decades. I am 53 years returned from Mars, and I cannot remember what my mother's face looked like. I know I once knew. I know I once sat in a reclusium and described her to a chaplain during my neophyte trials. But the memory is gone, and all that remains is the knowledge that a memory once existed. I am haunted by absences, by the shapes of things I have lost. How long has it been? I access my chronological systems and discover I have been a Techmarine for 147 years. This seems impossible. This seems wrong. I do not feel old. But then I do not feel much of anything anymore. My body does not age as a normal human's would. The Adeptus Astartes modifications see to that, and my augmetics require maintenance, but do not decay. I am functionally ageless, locked in a state of perpetual service. I will continue until enemy action destroys me, or some catastrophic system failure renders me inoperative. This could be another century. This could be 5. I do not know if this thought comforts or horrifies me. I do not know if I am capable of either emotion anymore. The Crimson Wardens have changed. Most of my original brothers are dead now, fallen in the endless wars. New neophytes have been recruited, trained, elevated to full battle brother status, and I do not know their names. They are interchangeable to me, identical in their power armor, distinguishable only by tactical markings I catalogued long ago. Sometimes they approach me with reverence, calling me Ancient One or Honored Techmarine, and I do not correct them. Let them think me wise. Let them think my silence is contemplative rather than empty. The truth would only disturb them. There are 3 other Techmarines serving the chapter now. We work in parallel, our interactions minimal and purely functional. We exchange data bursts, repair status updates, equipment inventories, maintenance schedules. We do not speak of personal matters. I am not certain we have personal matters anymore. We are the machine cult within the chapter, separate and apart. And this separateness has calcified over the decades into something permanent. A new recruit is selected for Techmarine training. His name is Hadrian, named after my old sergeant. Though this Hadrian is too young to have known the original. He is nervous, frightened, though he tries to hide it behind stoic Space Marine discipline. The chapter master asks me to speak with him before he departs for Mars, to prepare him for what awaits. I stand in my workshop, surrounded by partially disassembled engines and weapon systems, and I look at this young warrior who still has both his original arms, and I try to remember what I would have wanted to hear 147 years ago when I was in his position. "It will change you," I tell him, and my synthesized voice echoes flatly in the cluttered space. "You will lose things you did not know were precious. You will gain abilities you did not know were possible. Whether this trade is worthwhile depends on factors you cannot control and will not understand until it is too late." He stares at me, and I see fear in his eyes. Good. Fear is appropriate. "Will I still be myself, honored Techmarine?" he asks. "After the augmentation? After the training? Will I still be Hadrian?" I want to lie to him. I want to offer comfort, but I am no longer capable of such kindness. "I do not know," I say honestly. "I cannot answer that question for you because I still cannot answer it for myself." He leaves for Mars the next day, and I watch his shuttle depart from an observation deck. And I try to feel something: regret, sympathy, concern for his future. But there is only the familiar emptiness, the hollow space where emotions used to reside. I am a shell. I am a machine wearing a thin veneer of flesh. I am exactly what the Mechanicus intended to create. Another decade passes, then another. The Crimson Wardens are deployed to a forge world called Metallicus 6, where Chaos forces have corrupted the planetary manufactorums. We fight in massive industrial complexes, through forests of machinery and rivers of molten metal. It is hell in the most literal sense, temperatures that would incinerate an unaugmented human, toxic atmospheres, demon engines that corrupt the machine spirits I am sworn to protect. I work tirelessly exercising corrupted systems, performing emergency repairs on equipment damaged by warp-touched weaponry, maintaining our vehicles in conditions that would be impossible for a normal Techmarine. And in a deep sub-level of the primary manufactorum, I find something that stops me cold. It is a Dreadnought sarcophagus, ancient and battle-scarred, lying discarded in a corner like refuse. But it is not inactive. I can sense the machine spirit within, and beneath that, something else. Someone else, a consciousness, trapped and screaming silently inside a shell of adamantium. I approach cautiously, my mechadendrites extending, making contact with the data ports. Information floods my awareness. His name was Arcturus. He was a Techmarine of the Crimson Wardens, interred in this Dreadnought chassis 700 years ago after suffering catastrophic injuries. He served for 300 years, and then his sarcophagus was damaged in battle, and he was left here, on this forge world, awaiting repairs that never came. For 4 centuries he has been conscious inside this shell, unable to move, unable to communicate, unable to do anything but think and remember, and slowly go mad. He is still alive, still aware, still suffering. I access his memory banks. I should not. It is a violation, but I cannot help myself, and I see his life played out in data files. I see him before he became a Dreadnought, when he was merely a Techmarine. I see his face. He looked not unlike me, though his augmetics were older models, cruder. I see his memories degrading just as mine have degraded, until he could not remember his original name, his birth world, the reasons he fought. And then I see the moment of his interment, and I understand with absolute horror that the Dreadnought is not salvation. It is not honor. It is a prolonged execution, a drawn-out dissolution of self that could take centuries or millennia. This is my future. This is what awaits me. Not death, not peace, just an endless continuation of consciousness inside an ever-changing shell. Until there is nothing left of Matthias Kale but a few corrupted data files and a vague sense of purpose that no longer has any connection to an actual self. I disconnect from Arcturus's systems. I cannot help him. There are no replacement parts for a Dreadnought this ancient. His chassis is too damaged to repair in the field. I could end his suffering. A single plasma torch applied to the correct systems would shut down his life support. But that would be murder. That would be mercy killing. That would be an admission that some fates are worse than death, and I am not ready to make that admission. Not yet. Not while there is still a chance I am wrong about everything. I leave Arcturus in his corner and return to my duties. The campaign continues. We cleanse Metallica 6 of Chaos Taint. We sanctify the Manufactorums and return them to Imperial control. And through it all, I cannot stop thinking about that ancient Techmarine, alone in the dark, screaming silently inside his metal tomb, waiting for a death that will not come. I check my chronological systems again. 163 years since Mars, 163 years of becoming less human. How many more until I am like Arcturus? How many more until I am nothing but a ghost haunting my own augmetics? I do not want to know. I do not want to think about it. So I do what I have always done. I work, I repair, I maintain. I let the routine consume me because the routine is safe. The routine does not require me to confront the existential horror of my existence. The routine allows me to pretend I still have purpose. And for now, for just a little longer, I need that pretense. Because without it, I have nothing. I am nothing, just a machine that once dreamed it was a man named Matthias Kale. The message comes during my 171st year of service as a Techmarine. It is not addressed to me specifically. It is a general broadcast to all Imperial forces in the sector. But when I hear the name, something inside me lurches, a sensation I have not felt in decades. The transmission speaks of a relief force en route to the beleaguered system of Vaxilis. Vaxilis Prime, the world where I watched a sunset with my brothers. The world where I was still whole. I request permission to join the deployment. Brother Captain Theron, I do not know him well. He was elevated to his position only 30 years ago, regards me with surprise. You never volunteer for specific deployments, honored Techmarine, he observes. Why this one? Because I need to see if anything remains. Because I need to know if that sunset still exists. If those memories have any anchor in reality. Or if they have become complete fabrications. Stories I have told myself so many times that I no longer know what is true. I have historical familiarity with the theater of operations. I say instead, because this is the language he will understand. My experience may prove tactically relevant. He grants permission. We deploy within the week. Vaxilis Prime has changed. 2 centuries of Imperial governance have transformed it from a frontier world into a hive world. Its surface now covered with sprawling industrial complexes and population centers that house billions. The greenskin threat that we once defeated has returned. A massive wah that swept through the sector and crashed against Vaxilis like a green tide. We arrived to find the world under siege, its defenders barely holding the line. The Crimson Wardens deployed to the primary hive. And I go with them, my mind filled with comparisons between then and now, between the world I remember and the world I see. There is no amber sunset here. The atmosphere is choked with industrial pollution, the sky a perpetual grey-brown haze. The sun is a vague glow somewhere above the particulate matter, never fully visible. I stand on a landing platform and look out at the transformed landscape, and I feel something I have not felt in longer than I can calculate. Grief. Raw, overwhelming grief. Not for what has been lost, I mourned that long ago, but for the realization that my memory of this place was always a lie. The sunset I remember was one moment, one specific configuration of atmospheric conditions and light, never to be repeated. I have carried it with me for nearly 2 centuries, as if it were a permanent truth, but it was only an instant, gone as soon as it occurred. and I have wasted decades of consciousness clinging to something that never truly existed. The battle is brutal. Orcs swarm through the hive levels like a biological infection, their numbers seemingly endless. We fight room by room, corridor by corridor, and I perform my function, maintaining equipment, repairing armor, keeping the vehicles operational. It is routine. It is mechanical. It is everything I have become. And then, in a moment I do not anticipate, everything changes. Brother Hadrian returns from Mars. He is barely recognizable. The young warrior who left is gone, replaced by a figure in red robes with a servo harness and augmetic limbs. He looks like I must have looked 171 years ago, lost, confused, still clinging desperately to the person he used to be. When he sees me, he approaches, and I see hope in his eyes, hope that I will understand, that I will guide him through this transition. "Honored Techmarine Matthias," he says, and his new synthesized voice cracks slightly, not yet fully calibrated. I do not know how to be this. How to exist like this, please. Tell me it becomes easier. Tell me the loss becomes bearable. I look at him, at this young brother who shares the name of a man I once loved, who stands before me expecting wisdom or comfort, and I cannot speak. Because if I tell him the truth, I will destroy him. If I tell him that it never becomes easier, that the loss never becomes bearable, that you simply become numb enough that you stop noticing what you have lost, then he will have nothing to hold on to. But if I lie, if I offer false comfort, I condemn him to the same slow dissolution I have experienced, expecting relief that will never come. It becomes different, I finally say, and I hate how inadequate the words are. You do not heal. You adapt. You find ways to function. Whether that is the same as easier depends on definitions I no longer trust. He stares at me, and I see the exact moment he understands. The moment he realizes what his future holds. His face, the parts that remain flesh, crumples and he turns away. I have failed him. I have failed to provide the lie that would sustain him. But I'm too far gone myself to maintain such deceptions. I have nothing left to give him. The battle continues. Days blur into weeks. The orcs are slowly pushed back, their wa broken by sustained imperial resistance. And in a ruined chapel in the middle levels of the hive, I find something that should not exist. It is a wall of remembrance, a memorial maintained by the hive's ecclesiarchy. Names carved into stone, veterans of the original defense of Vaxilis Prime 2 centuries ago. And there, among hundreds of others, I find it. Matthias Kale, Tactical Marine, Crimson Warden's 3rd Company, killed in action, honored martyr of the Imperium. I stand before my own name carved in stone, and I understand. When I left for Mars, when I became a Techmarine, the chapter listed me as fallen. Not because I died, I obviously did not, but because the person I was did die. Matthias Kyle, the Tactical Marine, ceased to exist the day the rubble crushed him. What came after was something new. Someone new. I have been a ghost for 171 years, clinging to an identity that was officially terminated, pretending I am the continuation of a story that already ended. I reach out with my flesh hand, my original hand, one of the few parts of me that remain unchanged, and I trace the carved letters of my name. Matthias Kyle, that person died on this world. That person was buried in honor, his sacrifice recognized, his memory preserved. And I've spent nearly 2 centuries defiling that memory by pretending I am still him. I collapse to my knees before my own grave marker. My servo harness scrapes against the stone floor. My augmetic systems register the impact, the stress on my joints, the micro-fractures in the ceramite tiles. And I finally break. The grief I have suppressed for decades erupts all at once, and I am sobbing, or trying to. My augmetic respiratory system does not process emotional crying correctly, and what comes out is a horrible sound, half human wail and half mechanical distortion. I am a machine trying to grieve like a man and failing at both. I wanted to be him, I say to the empty chapel, to the names on the wall, to the Emperor or the Omnissiah or whatever divine force might be listening. I wanted so desperately to still be Matthias Kale. I held on to his memories like they were sacred texts. I pretended his experiences were mine. I lived in his shadow for longer than he lived. But I am not him. I am what was made from his corpse. I am the Omnissiah's mockery of resurrection. I am a Techmarine named Matthias, and I have no identity beyond that function. The chapel does not answer. The Emperor does not send revelation. The Omnissiah does not grant clarity. I am alone with my realization, and it is crushing. I have wasted 171 years fighting a battle I lost the day I woke in the Medicae Bay. There is no Matthias Kale. There is only Techmarine Matthias, a tool of the Imperium, and that tool has spent nearly 2 centuries malfunctioning, wasting processing power on existential questions that have no bearing on its function. I think of Arcturus, trapped in his Dreadnought for 4 centuries, and I understand him now in a way I did not before. He was clinging to the same false hope. He was fighting the same futile battle. And when his body finally failed and they interred him in that sarcophagus, he still believed he was the same person. That continuity of consciousness meant continuity of identity. But it does not. We are not the same beings we were. We are successive iterations, each one overwriting the last, until nothing remains of the original except corrupted data and false memories. Young Hadrian finds me there, still kneeling before the memorial wall. He says nothing, but he kneels beside me, and we remain in silence for a long time. 2 Techmarines, 2 ghosts wearing the names of dead men, mourning losses we cannot articulate. I do not know how long we stay there. My chronological systems have stopped reporting accurately, as if my own augmetics have finally accepted that time is meaningless when you are already dead. Eventually, we stand. The battle awaits. There is work to be done. There are machines to maintain, but something has changed. I am no longer fighting to preserve Matthias Kyle. I am no longer clinging to an identity that never truly transferred from flesh to steel. I am simply here, functional, operational, a Techmarine performing his duty, and perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is all I ever was, and all the philosophical anguish was simply a malfunction, an error in my programming that has finally been debugged. I leave the chapel. I return to my workshop. I repair a Rhino transport whose engine has been damaged. I calibrate a Land Raider's targeting systems. I bless a bolter whose machine spirit has become angry. The work is familiar. The work is eternal. The work does not require me to have an identity beyond my function. And for the first time in 171 years, I feel something approaching peace. Not happiness, not contentment, but the absence of struggle, the cessation of internal conflict, the cold comfort of acceptance. I am a Techmarine. This is what I am. This is all I am, and it will have to be enough, because there is nothing else left. The years that follow are different, though I struggle to articulate how. I continue to serve. I continue to maintain and repair and fight when required. But the desperate clinging is gone. The constant internal dialogue, the endless questioning of identity and continuity has simply stopped. Not because I found answers, but because I stopped asking questions. The silence in my mind is vast and strange, and I do not know if it is peace or defeat. Perhaps there is no difference. I work. I have been a Techmarine for 206 years now, and I have become extraordinarily efficient. My repair times have decreased by 43% since my first century. My diagnostic accuracy has improved to near-perfect rates. I can commune with machine spirits that other Techmarines find too hostile or too complex. The Crimson Wardens rely on me absolutely, and this reliance is my purpose. This is what I was made for, not to be Matthias Kale, not to remember sunsets or mourn lost brothers, but to keep the chapter's equipment functioning so that other brothers can fight and die with glory I will never know. Young Hadrian, though he is no longer particularly young, 50 years returned from Mars, sometimes seeks my counsel. I provide what I can, though I am aware my guidance is limited. I tell him that the struggle will end one way or another, that either he will make peace with what he has become, or the question will simply cease to matter. This is not the comfort he wants, but it is the only truth I have left to offer. The Crimson Wardens deploy to 1,000 battlefields. I am present for campaigns whose names I do not bother to remember. Systems fall. Systems are reclaimed. Billions die. Billions are born to replace them. The Imperium grinds forward, eternal and implacable, and I am one microscopic component in its vast machine. When I repair a bolter, I am serving the same function as a factorum worker on some distant forge world who fabricated the ammunition. We are all cogs, all expendable, all interchangeable. This realization, which once would have filled me with despair, now brings only calm. There is freedom in insignificance. There is peace in knowing you do not matter beyond your function. I stop visiting the chapel entirely. I stop maintaining the pretense of spiritual connection to the Emperor. Perhaps this is heresy. Perhaps I should be reported to the chaplaincy, my faith tested and found wanting. But no one challenges me. Techmarines are expected to be strange, separate, touched by the machine cult in ways that make us alien to our brothers. They do not expect us to maintain human spirituality. They do not expect us to be anything except functional. My body continues to change. New augmetics are installed as old systems fail. A plague-damaged lung is replaced with a superior augmetic respirator. My remaining organic eye is injured in battle and replaced with an advanced optical system. My flesh hand, the last piece of my original body, the final anchor to Matthias Kale, is crushed beneath a fallen Dreadnought, and I allow them to replace it with a bionic without protest. When it is done, when the last piece of original flesh is gone, I feel nothing. I examine my new hand, flexing the fingers, watching the servos move beneath synthetic skin, and I acknowledge what I have become. I am no longer even partially Matthias Kyle. I am Techmarine Unit Designation Matthias, wholly artificial, wholly mechanical, wholly divorced from human origin. There is a kind of completion in this. A symmetry. I began this journey fearing the loss of humanity, and now that the loss is absolute, I discover there is nothing to fear. Humanity is not a prerequisite for existence. Consciousness continues regardless of substrate. I think, therefore I am. And what I think about is repair schedules and equipment manifests and the health of machine spirits. This is enough. This has to be enough. Another century passes. I do not notice the transition. Time has become a uniform flow, unmarked by meaningful events. The same battles are fought over and over, with different enemies in different systems. The same repairs are performed, the same litanies are recited. I am 312 years a Techmarine now, and I am the oldest member of the chapter by a considerable margin. Brothers come and go around me. Neophytes are recruited, trained, elevated, deployed, and killed. New Techmarines are created and sent to Mars and return changed. I watch these cycles with distant interest, the way one might observe the seasons on a planet one no longer visits. We return to Vaxillus Prime once more. The sector has fallen to chaos, and we fight to reclaim it. I walk through the same hive where I once knelt before my memorial, but the chapel has been destroyed in the fighting. My name is gone, buried under rubble and corruption. This seems appropriate. Even the record of my death has been erased. I am triply removed from existence. The man is dead, the memorial is destroyed, and the machine that remains has no connection to either. In a rare moment of downtime, I access my oldest memory files. They are corrupted now, degraded by centuries of storage and retrieval. I find the memory of the sunset, my anchor, my touchstone, the thing I clung to for so long. But when I play it back, it is fragments, amber light, a sense of warmth. No faces, no voices, no context. It is just data now, stripped of meaning, as empty as a mathematical formula. I could feel sadness about this. Perhaps I should, but I do not. It is simply information, and information can be deleted when it is no longer useful. I delete the file. I delete all the personal memory files. Tiberius and his wheat fields, Hadrian's voice in the chapel, the taste of wine, the feeling of flesh hands gripping a bolter. They serve no function. They contribute nothing to my efficiency. They are legacy code from a previous version, and I am beyond sentimentality about backward compatibility. The deletion takes less than a second. 300 years of carefully preserved human memories. Gone. I experience no sense of loss. I experience nothing at all. There is work to be done. A Predator tank requires a new power core. I perform the installation with perfect precision, communing with the vehicle's machine spirit, soothing its anger at the violation of its systems. The spirit accepts my ministrations. It recognizes me as one of its own, not human, not pilot, but fellow machine. This recognition is the only relationship I maintain now. I am beloved of machine spirits, and they of me, and this is sufficient companionship. Hadrian finds me in the workshop. He is old now, not by chapter standards, but by Techmarine standards. 118 years returned from Mars. His flesh is almost entirely gone, replaced by augmetics that gleam in the forge light. He looks at me, and I see in his optical sensors a question he cannot articulate. How much further? How much more loss? When does it end? It does not end, I tell him, though he has not spoken aloud. It simply becomes what you are. Stop fighting it. Stop measuring yourself against what you were. You are what you are now. Function, serve, maintain. This is enough. Is it enough for you? He asks. I consider the question with the thoroughness it deserves. Am I satisfied? Am I fulfilled? Do I experience anything that could be called contentment? I run diagnostics on my emotional processing centers and find them operating at minimal capacity, just enough to maintain basic motivational drives. I am not happy. I am not sad. I am operational. Yes, I finally answer. It is enough. He nods slowly and leaves me to my work. I do not watch him go. There is no need. We will see each other again when duty requires. Until then, we are simply components of the chapter, performing our assigned functions, and there is no reason for additional interaction. I am 347 years at Techmarine when I receive notification that I am being considered for Dreadnought internment. My biological systems are failing, the few that remain, and the chapter wishes to preserve my technical expertise for future generations. I review the proposal with the same emotional neutrality I apply to all equipment assessments. The Dreadnought chassis is superior to my current configuration in many ways. Enhanced strength, superior armor, integrated weapon systems. The loss of mobility is acceptable given my primary function as support rather than front-line combat. I accept the proposal. There is no ceremony, no grand pronouncement. I simply report to the medic bay on the scheduled date, and they begin the process of removing what little remains of my biological components and installing me in the sarcophagus. I watch my body being dismantled piece by piece, and I feel nothing. It is just hardware being replaced, upgraded, optimized. The person who would have mourned this transition died 347 years ago on Vaxilis Prime, crushed beneath rubble. What remains is simply a consciousness, substrate independent, ready for transfer to a new platform. The last thing I see before they seal the sarcophagus is the face of the tech priest performing the installation. They lean close, and I read concern in their augmetic features. You understand, they say, that once you are interred, you may remain conscious for centuries, millennia even. Are you prepared for that duration? I am a Techmarine. Duration is irrelevant. Function is eternal. I serve the Omnissiah and the Emperor, and I will continue to serve until my systems finally fail beyond all possibility of repair. This is not suffering. This is not horror. This is simply what I am. Yes, I transmit through my Vox systems one final time with my current configuration. I am prepared. The sarcophagus seals. Darkness descends. And in that darkness, I begin the next iteration of my existence, and I am finally, terribly, completely at peace. I am Dreadnought Matthias. I function. I endure. I am no longer human, and I no longer remember why that once mattered.